Yes, welcome back to the Sports Show Now, Pub. We love our footy in South Australia, no doubt about it. One of the great clubs, of course, South Adelaide Panthers down there now. They've moved down to Noarlunga.
Yeah.
They used to be pretty close just off South Road, but one of the men that was in their premiership team in 1964, Bryan Plunger's been good enough to come and spend some time with us. Bryan, how are you?
Pretty good, Phil. Yeah. Good.
Let's talk a little bit about the 1964 team. Neil Curley, captain coach. How did you find Curls as a coach?
Oh, Curly, he was a great motivator, I reckon. He came from West Adelaide, as you know, and they'd won a premiership a couple of years before that, and then they dropped him 2 years later. And he came over in '64, and we'd finished bottom the year before, although we did lose 6 games pretty close. So we had the nucleus of a side, and then with Curls there and his motivation, everything clicked, and we only lost 3 games the whole year.
Ian Day was a big part of that team.
Daisy was there, yeah.
Yeah. How would you describe him as a player to today's players?
A great skill, very, very skillful, very low to the ground, but he could kick a ball out of sight. He was a terrific kick.
Mate, it's been a long time between drinks at the footy club. You're on the, well, we can talk about your time as chairman of selector. How is that? I mean, going from playing to now being a selector to chairman of selector, how did you find that role?
Well, that was, I think it was 1969 and 70. Peter Daly was coach, and I was assistant coach on the selection committee. And also the following year, Jimmy Dean coached in a similar situation. I only had the 2 years in that position.
Was it hard? Was it hard? Because, you know, you've come from a player to a selector. Do you see it differently?
The advantage, I think, is you know the players because you've played with them. So I think that helps quite a lot. And so I didn't find it all that difficult.
You know, just in that short conversation, you mentioned people like Neil Curley and Peter Daly and Ian Day. I mean, they are legends of the game, aren't they?
Right.
And Jimmy Dean, of course. But it must hurt, must stick a little bit that we haven't got one since '64.
Over 50 years.
Enough's enough.
Exactly. We have a get-together every year, and most of the players
It'd be nice to pass the baton off at some stage, wouldn't it?
I'm dying to. Because I still follow them. I don't go every week, but I go most weeks nowadays. There was a period for about 6 or 8 years where I didn't go much at all, but in recent years, say the last 5 or 6 years, I go fairly regularly. I've got a son who's fully involved.
Is that right?
Full time.
Fantastic.
He's
the
team manager.
Yes.
So there's another added interest from my point of view.
Which is nice. Yeah, exactly. You know, it had a little bit to do with Sturt over the years, and you see that premiership group. And they won a handful, of course. But there was a really unbelievably special bond between that.
That's right.
How has that bond been maintained over that 50 years?
Well, there's a chap named Tony Shaw. He played back pocket in that side. Yes. And he shifted to Darwin, but he would organise a reunion every year from Darwin. Yeah. He'd come down. He must have had the ability to be, or the wherewithal to be able to do that sort of thing. And he organised it every year for 50 years. Wow. And now, what is it now?
He was obviously married then, a nice opportunity to get away
from it. Well, and now he's living in Sydney, and he still comes over for it.
Fantastic.
And Graham Durbridge actually organises it now. And, but he's the one that kept us all together.
Okay, good.
Without him, it wouldn't happen.
Footy clubs have a great tradition. They have a great heritage that sometimes gets lost. Just before we came on, you were saying you're on the Heritage Committee now. How's that progressing?
Well, we only put it together 2 years ago, and of course we've got 140 years of history, and trying to get all that onto data onto file, and we're only just scratching the surface at the moment.
Has something surprised you as you've gone through? You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Jeez, that really got me by surprise.
Things, but all the old photos, we've got all these old photos back to 1892, and you have a look at them, and they're a bit moth-eaten and a bit worn, but it's amazing. You know, you look through them all, and what will happen is they'll all get catalogued and put on file, and a copy of the photo will be put on there as well. So if you want to look up Phil Smythe, boom, you just go in and up comes all this history. Wow. That's the objective. Yeah. It's an AFL database, which the SANFL has picked up, and all the sample clubs are following on. And it's 140 years, we've got a lot of work.
It's a beautiful memory. Was there a concern that some was lost? We mentioned Panther Park, and then you had a stint at Adelaide Oval, then you've gone up to Noarlunga, and usually when you shift,
Things get lost.
Well, that's the trouble. We don't know what might have been lost.
Yeah, okay.
But I know that they did sell off a bit of our memorabilia.
Oh, really?
And I don't know why they did that. But there's a chap, I won't mention his name, but he's got a lot of it.
Yes, okay, yeah.
In his office, and so we know where a lot of it is.
But, you know, I think sometimes, and I remember being at Channel 10 and they chucked out we had games, you know, on the old reel-to-reel tapes, for want of a better description, and they were filling the bin full of it, just chucking it out to empty space. And that's how we started the show. Corey and I would take them out of the bin, put them in our ute, just to keep them, because I think people who haven't got an affinity with what was, they just don't get it. And what you're doing is great.
Oh, that's right. I was amazed when I went into this chap's office and I said, hey, that's the same as what we've got down at South Adelaide. He said, no, I bought it. He said, well, they auctioned them off. Oh. Well, I wasn't very pleased.
No, of course not.
Some people, now that they understand what you're trying to do, are they willing to let it go and give it back?
Well,
or
we haven't got to that stage
attached
yet.
to it,
I'll have to talk to Jack about that.
Yeah,
but,
that's right, yeah.
Yes.
But no, we haven't got to that stage of trying to find out who has got all the stuff that was sold off.
But the change of the game, the style of the game, it evolves, the game continues to evolve. Do you enjoy the new style of game? Not at all?
Not at all.
No. Enjoy the SANFL game better?
It's almost like AFL now, isn't it? They're all down one end, like the under-10s were when I was coaching them.
Yes.
You know, and I find that frustrating. And kicking back and across. You know,
but you know what? It's funny. This was brought up. I didn't. I was a bit of a critic of women's football before it came out. You know what? I felt myself. I was compelled to watch it because their skills aren't quite up to. There's actually a lot of physical contact.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, there's a lot of physical contact. There's a lot of. Their skills aren't good enough to do what SANFL and AFL players do at the moment. Yeah. And so I sort of got into watching the Crows females play. But it's you're right. I think as a traditionalist, you look at today's game and you think, it's a shame you don't see a lot of what we used to see. And you forget what it was until you see the old video again.
I watched Sam Newman the other night. I don't normally watch the footy show, but I just happened to switch it on and he was talking. Someone asked him about the game and he said, well, financially and attendance-wise, it's never been better. But he said the game is terrible. And he listened to all these things and he showed a few snippets of some of the things that happened. And SANFL are doing the same, the overuse of handball and then losing it. You know, 7 handballs and then the loser goes back the other way and the other mob get a goal. It's going on all the time.
Yeah. David Parkin summed it up really well. He said when he started playing footy, the guys came out pre-season, ran around the oval. Then they bounced the ball to start the games and they went straight down the middle of the ground. He said now they've got all these sports science people where you watch the players come out and they do their sprints in a straight line up and down all over the place. And then they go around again. Just quickly, because we do need to go. I'd like to spend more time with you, Bryan, but some of the great players that you played against or played with, who are a couple?
John Cale, of course. We mentioned John earlier. He actually got me out to South Adelaide. We went to school together and he was with South Adelaide Colts at the time. He asked me to come out and it started from there. And of course, he eventually went to Port Adelaide. But Ken Eustace, Darryl Hicks, Pepe Virtudes, Dennis Erry.
Who was the hardest for you to stand?
John Cale.
Jack, was he?
He was so, you know, pepper and salt into everything. He was the hardest, and he's a left footer, which didn't help, you know. Could I tell one quick story?
Absolutely.
In '64, when he came over, we used to train on Pinky Flat and up and down 94 Hill and in the car park because we couldn't get on the oval because cricket was still going on. Anyway, first night Adelaide Oval, out we goes, 40 odd of us, and about a dozen brand new Sherrans, and Curls picks them up. We all come into the centre. Curls picks up a couple of balls, says, "Not hard enough. Put more air in them." So they went back. The ball steward is a fellow named Clem Backman, Lindsay Backman's father. Well, he's a crusty old bugger, and his comment was bullshit. So he put all the balls on the table, sat down, rolled a smoke, smoked the cigarette, got the balls back on the oval, and Curls picked them up and said, "That's better."
That's right, exactly. Very good.
Trying to show his authority, Curls, of course, you know, which was quite funny. And the other story I'd like to tell, if I could, is about our doorman, Frankie Brown, who he was doorman for about 50 years, I think. And 64 grand final day, Curls said, "No one in the rooms, you know, that's it." Anyway, there's a knock on the door and Frank said, "No one in." Curls said, "No one in." It's Clem Croft, who was the president of the club. I don't care. Curl said, you can't come in. I've got the Prime Minister with me, Mr Menzies. Yeah, Frank said, and I'm Prince Philip.
Yeah. And he did have.
Anyway, Clem finally, and Tony Kenny, the SANFL president, he was out there as well. Anyway, they finally convinced Frank to open the door, and in come Bob Menzies, and he wandered through among the players.
We have to ask her.
I think we're going to have to get you back, Brian. I think you've got some stories we need to hear, mate. So.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about current footy too.
Yeah, well, we'll get you back for those. Not enough time. Brian Plungers was our special guest. He will come back, and we've got some stories to tell. Stay with us.